Hi everybody, I'm Catherine, and I am a shadow worker. And you may or may not know what that means, and I'm here to explain it to you. So the shadow, in its psychological sense, was first coined by psychoanalyst Carl Jung in the early 20th century. And what it means is it's the collective of emotions, traits, gifts, whatever else we had to repress as children in order to adapt to the circumstances of growing up, in order to live in the world as our parents taught us it's good to live in the world, what would make us good kids. And so as children, what we do, what each and every person does, we all have a shadow. I have a shadow. If you're human, you have unconscious, repressed stuff. You have stuff that isn't making it into what you call your personality. And so what all of us do to survive our childhoods is we learn that when we do certain things and don't do other things, we get more attention, love, praise, and we get less humiliation, punishment, rejection, etc. And so we're molded, all of us are molded by our parents because our parents are doing the best they can do based on their own growing up to teach us what it is to be a human being as they know it. Now, of course, because we're not raised by ourselves, our parents can never teach us what it is to be us. Our parents, even the best parents in the world, and when I get to be a parent, I'm going to fail at this too, and that's hard to recognize. But I'm not going to be able to teach my kid really, truly what it is to be them. That's going to be their job. I'm going to be able to teach my kid how I've learned is perfect and wonderful to be not perfect. See, that's my shadow coming out. But I'm going to be able to teach my kid how I learned and how I've grown to experience love and joy and to thrive in the world, but that's not going to be exactly what they need. So shadow work is actually nothing dark. It's been called the highest form of light work because it gets right to the core of who we are and who we are not. So what is the mask that we go around wearing in the world that we call our personality, that actually is just the collective of adaptive mechanisms, behaviors, facial expressions that we learned as children to survive. So what is the mask? And each and every one of us have it. I certainly have it. And then what is our truth? And what are we forgetting that was essential when we came into this world? So one of the basic tenets of shadow work is that each and every human being is a bright, whole, joyful, divinely connected light soul when we enter the world. We know why we're here. We're filled with love. We're attuned to unconditional love. And naturally, because we are on the human plane in this dimension, that bright light can't simply exist as it is. We have to learn and be socialized. We have to learn the rules. We can't just yell in the middle of a grocery store whenever we want to. Just an example. We can't go to the bathroom in a corner. That's usually my favorite example. But so all of us need to know the rules. And so naturally that light, like if you imagine a super bright light bulb, it collects dust over time. Naturally, that light gets dulled as we collect traumas, experiences, as we learn that we can't just go out being exactly who we are all the time. So that process of collecting dust is how we accumulate our shadow. So for some of us, the shadow is much thicker, much more dense than others, depending on how lucky you were with how you were raised. Were you raised as a child in a way that encouraged you to be yourself, even if your parents couldn't understand it? Then you probably can relate a little bit less to this. You probably know that you are the fullness of who you are, getting there anyway. And if you grew up in a way that was highly regimented, where children, for example, should be seen and not heard. If you were scolded for pursuing what you really wanted to pursue, or for having emotions that were real for you, if you were very scolded, you created that as your shadow into adulthood. And so, for example, for a lot of people who were very scolded for having strong feelings or for wanting what they want, depression becomes a reality as their shadow becomes thicker and thicker around them. And I do think of depression as that cloud of numbness where so much of you is repressed and forgotten and hidden that you just don't feel anything anymore. You don't see that light of that super bright light bulb that is your soul. It doesn't do justice to what your soul actually is at all, but let's just call it a light bulb. And so the process of shadow work is diving deep. It's a commitment to diving deep into yourself and learning about parts of you that you might have completely forgotten and you might not relate to at all. In fact, the less you relate to something, the more evident it is that it's part of your shadow. So for example, I work with a lot of women, and probably because I've experienced this in my own shadow, they're drawn to work with me on the energetic plane. So I work with a lot of these women who are a little bit older, and they don't relate to being angry or having anger at all. Like they walk into my office, and of course, because my gift is I see somebody's shadow just written all over them before they even say anything or before I even see them. This woman, for example, would have anger written all over her. And I would tell her it, and she would say, "Oh no, I'm not. I've never been angry. I don't know what you're talking about." And that's a big red flag that anger is so ingrained into her shadow. It's so deep that she's not going to relate to it at all. But reclaiming that anger is the key to her freedom, her power, her sense of purpose, and her ability to set boundaries in her reality. And so that's a really tough one, especially for a lot of women to retrieve, is anger. But it's just an example. And so the shadow work is a gradual process. Well, for some people it's quite fast. For others who are maybe a little bit older and more ingrained, it could be a little bit slower, of opening yourself up to the possibility that you are so much more complex than you appear in your personality, or as we say, your ego. And that the more awareness you can shine on those unconscious repressed parts of yourself, such as anger, the more free you become to live the life that you want. So here's what makes shadow work really important, especially for people, and I work with a lot of professional healers and visionaries and people who are really making an impact. So especially if you're belonging to that kind of person, if you have a lot of unconscious stuff, if you have a lot of shadow, it's going to show up in your reality in the form of conflicts, crisis situations, bad relationships, job situations that are unpleasant, just you name it, it's going to show up. Because the reality is that unconscious, repressed emotions project into the universe. They project that vibration much stronger than our attempts at positive thinking. So even if somebody, and I've seen a lot of these people in and out of my office who say, I've done everything, I've read all the books, gone to the workshops, I think positive thoughts, I meditate every day, and then it becomes clear to me that they're meditating to further repress their feelings, even though they don't know it. So if you're one of those people who feels like you've done a lot, and yet life just isn't working for you, well, it actually is working for you, because life and the universe will constantly present you with situations to mirror your shadow back at you. So our life is simply a mirror of ourselves, and we have 100% responsibility for creating the life that we want by creating ourselves in each moment, by choosing who we're going to show up as in each moment. And so we only attain true freedom when we address and heal and bring awareness to the unconscious patterns, emotions, etc., that are longing to come into our reality, longing to be integrated into our consciousness, because that's what's happening when you have those crises, that illness, that bad relationship. And trust me, I might look young, but I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot of those. Anybody say bad relationships out there? So, and I know that, well, I've been devoting my life to shadow work ever since I was a teenager, probably about 17, and it just gets easier and easier. So you can think of shadow work in this way. Shadow work is the process of diving deep. Imagine that you're in an ocean and you see a long chain and there's an anchor holding it at the bottom, holding like a boat at the bottom of the ocean. Shadow work is the process of diving deep in order to go down to that anchor and unlatch it from the ocean floor. And so the work can be hard because we're feeling the feelings that we've repressed for our whole lives, and that's challenging. It takes courage to do shadow work. It takes courage to go to the bottom of the ocean. But the reality is that because we are naturally light, we are buoyant, you will naturally, after you unlatch that anchor, you will float to the surface because you realize that actually you were attached to that anchor the entire time, because our unconscious material, our shadow, does hold us back. So it's really a very light-filled process. And I know in my own life, my life just gets better and better. I'm with the man of my dreams. I'm getting married. I have this amazing career and none of this is happening to me. I'm not lucky. I'm lucky in certain ways, but that's complicated because I chose my life just like we all did, right? But I created this because I've been dedicated to my own shadow work. So it's not an ongoing process of drudgery and difficult work, but it is a lightening process, which is getting back to who you truly are, and you will experience freedom more and more. And this is especially important for those who are intuitives, who are healers, psychics, shamans, whoever you want to call it. And I work with a lot of healing professionals, a lot of life coaches, because we say in our career over and over again, to have success in this career or in this path, you have to get over yourself. And what does that mean? You have to have the courage and the openness and the trust in yourself and the universe to be open to whatever arises. And you can't let your own fears and your own patterns from the past get in the way. And so shadow work is the perfect complement to one of these careers like I have. And in fact, I think it's a necessity for somebody who wants to practice ethically and to the degree of success that they know they can have. I think it's essential to do shadow work and to gain that level that you want to have, and to be able to serve your clients in the way that you know you can if it weren't for your blocks. In other words, your shadow. So thank you so much for tuning in, and it's been a joy to describe the shadow to you and shadow work. Take care.